Hello there, Lunar Squadron. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to our road to the Book of Boba Fett. It is almost here, guys. Last time on our road to the Book of Boba Fett, we covered all about Bossk. This time around, we let you guys pick, and it was almost a landslide victory for Jango Fett.
May the Force be with you, bro.
We are going to go over the entire canonical guide to the lore and backstory of Jango Fett. As you guys all know, Jango Fett is my personal childhood favorite. I absolutely loved this character growing up, so it's an absolute pleasure to cover everything we know about this character so far, and most importantly, what mark this character left on Boba Fett. Now, before we get into the details of this one, I want to direct you guys all to our Discord. It is a great place to talk to other members of the Lunar Squadron and Nick and myself. You can always find a link to the Discord in the description down below. And also, before we get into this one, Nick, we have a important message, don't we?
Yeah, we sure do, actually. I actually wanted to tell you a story, Andreas. So earlier today, I was driving around town getting some errands done, and I got really hungry. And you know what I decided to do? I decided I was going to get Obi-Wan's favorite snack. So I went over to Taco Bell and decided to get a Crunchwrap Supreme. Now, while I was waiting in line at the drive-thru, there was only one thing going through my mind. Do you know what that was, Andreas?
What was it?
I was thinking, how can I live Bossk? And do you know how you live Bossk? You live Bossk with Lunar Squadron. So do Bossk a huge favor and live Bossk with Lunar Squadron, and subscribe to the channel.
Muchos gracias, Bossk. Now let's get into the video. So just like the last time around, we are going to kind of flesh out the full backstory of the bounty hunter, this time Jango Fett, and then we are going to kind of further discuss the mark that this person has left on Boba Fett and kind of flesh out how this might impact the Book of Boba Fett and the story that is going to be told here in just under a week now. So Nick, if you want to just kick us off with the background of Jango Fett, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so the Jango Fett that we all know and love, who became the galaxy's greatest bounty hunter, actually did not start as a bounty hunter. Jango Fett is from the planet Concord Dawn, which is in the Outer Rim within the Mandalore sector, and he was actually a foundling of the Mandalorians, much like Din Djarin from the show The Mandalorian. So this is a cool little connection that the Fetts have to the Mandalorian show. And at one point, Jango Fett even fought in the Mandalorian Civil Wars, and while he was fighting alongside the Mandalorians, he was gifted a set of Mandalorian armor, his now famous silver and blue armor, and he was even promoted to the rank of Mandalorian Commando. At the conclusion of the Mandalorian Civil Wars, he was actually ostracized by the new Prime Minister of Mandalore, Prime Minister Almec, and he disavowed any connection to the Fett family because he claimed that he was simply a bounty hunter and had actually stolen the armor he was given. Now, this was a result of Jango Fett deciding to become a bounty hunter at the conclusion of the war. Why the Prime Minister decided to take such a strong stance against the Fett family, no one really knows, or do we, Andreas?
I mean, this really does root from a long-standing debate which kind of exists outside of the fictional story of Star Wars itself. It actually roots from some dissonance on the creative end of things, as it is true that Dave Filoni kind of had this understanding from George Lucas that the Fetts were not Mandalorians because it was George Lucas's plan that they weren't. However, more recently, there has been this whole movement in The Mandalorian. There is actually a loophole to become a Mandalorian. Nick, you mentioned it yourself, the foundling loophole. we all know that the Mandalorians, as a part of their creed, have a duty whereby if they do find an abandoned foundling or a young orphan, they do have a duty to take that orphan under their wing, and then the Mandalorian has a choice. Either return that foundling to its people or its kind, or raise it as their own child in the ways of the Mandalorians. And then once that foundling becomes of age, they have a choice to either return to their people or join the Mandalorians, where they do enjoy the full benefit of being acknowledged as a fully fledged Mandalorian. So we know, based on the whole backstory of foundlings in Star Wars as of now, that the Fetts, particularly Jango Fett, is definitely treated as a Mandalorian because he was a legitimate foundling. However, Boba Fett's story gets a little bit more dicey because we don't know that foundling or Mandalorian status gets passed by blood. But what we do know for a fact is that the tradition of being a bounty hunter runs strong in this family, don't we, Nick?
Yeah, it absolutely does. Now, as I stated, at the conclusion of the Mandalorian Civil Wars, Jango Fett decided to enter the profession of being a bounty hunter, and he actually quickly rose the ranks and eventually became known as the galaxy's greatest bounty hunter. Now, along the way, he became associated with many of the famous bounty hunters that we all know and love from the Star Wars universe, including Zam Wesell, Aurra Sing, and even Cad Bane. Like I said, Jango Fett became one of the galaxy's, if not the galaxy's greatest bounty hunter, and because of this, he actually caught the attention of the Sith, and he was approached by the Sith Lord Darth Tyrannus, otherwise known as Count Dooku, who actually hired Jango Fett to serve as the genetic foundation for a secret army that he was creating alongside the Kaminoans, which would later be known as the Clone Army. Now, Jango Fett only had a couple requests, and one of the main requests that he had for his genetic coding being used for the clones was an unaltered clone that he could raise as his own son, and he named him Boba Fett. Now, in regards to the clone army, Jango Fett actually did not take any pride in the creation or the training of the clone army, even though he had a big involvement in their training, as he saw the clone army as more of an accomplishment of the Kaminoans and not one of his own achievements. And because of this, Jango Fett decided to take on more bounty hunting jobs as a way to keep busy, but he also did it for another huge reason, didn't he, Andreas?
That's right, Nick. You made a great point there. In exchange for his genetic code, Jango Fett wanted really two things, and that is his son, Boba Fett, and also a large sum of money. Now, if he made so much money for his genetic code, why would Jango Fett want to go run around doing all of these bounty hunting missions, risking his life for, money, which he already has in abundance? And really, there's one answer to that. It was to primarily train his son, Boba, with every single bounty mission that he did. Now, if you guys have read a recent comic, a Marvel Star Wars comic, which is Star Wars Age of the Republic, Jango Fett, the entire comic is about one such mission where Jango Fett is teaching Boba a very important lesson of how to deal with unknown factors. That's kind of the lesson that he's teaching on this bounty run. Now, in this bounty run, Jango Fett is telling Boba that he is going to be working with three kind of unknown bounty hunters, kind of shady guys that he doesn't particularly trust. And Boba kind of responds asking, why aren't we working with bounty hunters that I'm aware of? Bounty hunters like he specifically names Cad Bane, Aurra Sing, or Zam Wesell. Jango Fett replies saying, I want you to work with people who you have no idea what they do, how they work, whether or not they can be trusted, to teach you how to deal with the unknown. And rest assured, the unknown comes along when one of these bounty hunters holds Boba hostage, kind of threatening to Jango Fett that if he doesn't turn over the bounty to the other three bounty hunters, that he would be taking Boba's life. Boba does extraordinarily well in this circumstance and actually ends up killing two of the three bounty hunters. And then Jango kind of asks Boba, why did you keep the third one alive? Boba says, I kept him alive to tell the whole galaxy, tell every bounty hunter in this galaxy what happens when you mess with the Fett. So it kind of remains to be seen in the Book of Boba Fett whether or not this lesson will kind of be a lesson that he carries into this series, whether or not he has to deal with some unknown figures, and whether or not he leaves some people alive to show what happens when you mess with the Fetts.
Now, up to this point, we have been talking about the rise and growing legacy of the feared bounty hunter Jango Fett. However, at this point in his life, the downfall of Jango Fett was quickly approaching as the Clone Wars and the end of the Galactic Republic were quickly approaching. And it all starts with Jango Fett's participation in the assassination attempts against the Senator Padme Amidala, who was actually being targeted by Count Dooku as a request of Newt Gunray, who I guess was not over the trade disputes on Naboo from Episode 1. Now, Jango Fett actually hired the bounty hunter Zam Wesell to help him carry out the assassination attempts. He actually supervised Zam Wesell's assassination attempts. However, what Jango Fett did not know at the time when he hired Zam Wesell to help him assassinate the Senator was that the Jedi Knight Obi-Wan Kenobi and his Padawan Anakin Skywalker were actually assigned to the security detail to keep Senator Amidala safe from these assassination attempts. And during the second assassination attempt on Coruscant, a chase ensued where Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker pursued Zam Wesell through the quote-unquote streets of Coruscant, attempting to capture and figure out who was behind the assassination attempts and why these assassination attempts were taking place. And at one point, Obi-Wan and Anakin were actually successful in capturing Zam Wesell. However, before Zam could reveal who was behind the assassination attempts and what their motive was, Jango Fett actually killed Zam Wesell with a saber dart. However, he wasn't very smart because he used a Kaminoan saber dart, and this kind of raised some big problems for our good friend Jango Fett, didn't it?
Yeah, it definitely did, because Jango was not aware that he had Detective Obi-Wan high on his heels. Obi-Wan, of course, taking that saber dart down to Dex's diner in Coruscant. Dex telling him exactly where this saber dart came from. It came from Kamino, and as we all know, Obi-Wan, with a little bit of wisdom from a few Padawans, was able to track down exactly where Kamino was. He went all the way there and, ends up unraveling this whole plan of a hidden clone army which would be furnished for the Jedi. Among other things, he actually bumps into Jango Fett, as we all know, who was the blueprint for all of these clones. And in a very passive-aggressive encounter between Obi-Wan and Jango.
I was recruited by a man called Tyrannus on one of the moons of Bogdan.
Curious.
Do you like your army?
I look forward to seeing them in action.
They'll do their job well. I'll guarantee that.
Thank you for your time, Jango.
Always a pleasure to meet a Jedi.
I also want to drop a fun fact. You know when Jango and Boba are kind of speaking in their own secret language?
Boba, Ruded Sohib.
That's actually confirmed in canon to be known as Fett code. That's right, guys. The Fett family has their own code, apparently, that they speak in after this whole scene where he asks Boba to get the ship ready. Jango and Obi-Wan face off on the platforms in Kamino, and ultimately Jango is able to get away, and little does he know is still being tracked thanks to the arm of Obi-Wan throwing that tracker on the Slave One very accurately, like a quarterback. And Obi-Wan ends up tracking Jango all the way to Geonosis, where he is ultimately captured. And this is kind of where the demise of Jango really is fully put into play. We all know that after Anakin and Obi-Wan were taken into the arena and surrounded by the forces of the droid army, as well as Darth Tyrannus, that when chaos ensues after Yoda brings in the clone forces, that Jango's jetpack is damaged by a reek. Now, Jango might have prevailed against this reek by shooting him in the eye. However, when he is confronted by Mace Windu, he's unable to fly away and is ultimately decapitated by Mace Windu. Now, this is actually quite important because Boba Fett sees this whole thing unfold. We all know that very famous scene from Attack of the Clones whereby Jango Fett's helmet is being held by Boba Fett, who had just seen a Jedi decapitate his father, somebody that he really looked up to, somebody who taught him everything he knew up until that point. It's a really emotional moment for this character, and I really do think that is going to play into the motives of Boba Fett going into the Book of Boba Fett if he were to interact with any Jedi going forward, knowing full well that the Jedi were ultimately responsible for the death of his father. It might actually spell out some pretty interesting narratives for the Book of Boba Fett.
You are absolutely correct, Andreas. Now, what is perhaps the most interesting element of Jango Fett's character, despite having among the lowest screen time in all of Star Wars, he leaves behind perhaps the biggest legacy in the Star Wars universe. Because, as we stated, his likeness, his genetics were used to form the Clone Army, the backbone of the Grand Army of the Republic, and the same army that was later on used by Palpatine to eradicate the Jedi Order. So in a way, Jango Fett, despite not being Force sensitive or a Sith or any sort of Jedi type, actually brings about the collapse of the Jedi, which is a huge legacy to leave behind. And as you mentioned, his death really left a huge mark on Boba Fett and really helped shape Boba Fett into who he is as a character, as we've seen in the Clone Wars show, where he teams up with fellow bounty hunters such as Aurra Sing and Bossk to exact revenge against the Jedi who killed his father. And like you said, it will be very interesting to see if any of these motives or any of this background that he has and lessons he's learned from Jango Fett will play into the Book of Boba Fett when the show releases. So, just to reiterate, Jango Fett, not a huge character, but leaves behind a huge legacy on the Star Wars universe.
He absolutely does, and I kind of want to end just with this remark, and that is that while the blueprint that, I guess the genetic blueprint that was left behind by Jango Fett kind of had all of these waves that were made in the Star Wars galaxy, perhaps the greatest blueprint that Jango left were those years and missions spent with his son, with Boba, imprinting him with every trip that they went on and leaving Boba with this way of life, this way of thinking and acting. And Boba ultimately passes the clones and the whole Jedi Order, which is eliminated by the clones. Boba kind of is still existing through Episode 6 and onto, we actually don't know when his story is going to be resolved until, maybe even beyond the Book of Boba Fett. But the real kind of blueprint that's left behind by Jango Fett is his son Boba Fett. So it will just be great to see how long-lasting the impact of Jango Fett lasts throughout the Star Wars universe as Boba Fett's story continues to unravel and ultimately comes to an end. Whenever that is, I guess it remains to be seen. However, guys, that is pretty much it for Jango's story. Let us know in the comments down below how you all enjoyed this video. Also, if you did enjoy the video, please leave it a like. And if you had any more comments, questions, and concerns about Jango Fett and his legacy, leave them in the comments down below. We also love hearing, different things from legends that you guys might have read. As we said at the beginning of this video, this is a canonical telling of Jango Fett's story, so we didn't really get into the legends of things. There is probably a whole library full of information about Jango Fett and the Fett family in those legends. We could do a whole series on that if we wanted, so we didn't really get down that rabbit hole. This video is long enough with just the canon, so let us know any of those things down below. We love to hear those stories. Also, guys, like we said at the beginning, please feel free to join in on our Discord. The link is down below. And as always, you are all welcome to enlist in the Lunar Squadron by hitting that subscribe button, where you can learn, all about the Star Wars galaxy. We will be doing these lore and background videos with more frequency going forward to teach you all about the inner workings of the galaxy far, far away. However, that's going to do it for this particular lore video, and we will see you all next time.